Well, we'll connect you back to that interaction Kojo Yankson is having with Professor William Mampofo with the virology department, where he heads at Noguchi, and all those explanations, that great education we all need as to how that department and the rest of the institute is very critical to a COVID fight will all be brought to the fore. But in the meantime, this election, that's the 2020 general election, will be the third and final contest between John Mahama and Akufo-Addo on who becomes Ghana's president. Now, having lost to John Mahama in the 2012 elections, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo won convincingly in 2016. And as election 2020 approaches, the stakes are still very high. Whoever emerges victorious serves the final of a constitutionally permissible 2 terms. But the spread of the coronavirus into Ghana presents a challenge for both candidates. In the following report, Winston Amwa puts the spotlight on the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on politics in Ghana.
In February 2020, the NDC launched the Speak Out Tour. The tour, which was to take place in all 16 regions of the country, was to enable its leader and flag bearer, John Mahama, to meet, interact with, and listen directly to the people of Ghana. The party's manifesto team was to accompany Mr. Mahama to take advantage of the tour to listen to the views of the grassroots and incorporate them in the party's manifesto. Having toured the Western North, Ahafo, and Upper East regions, Ghana recorded cases of coronavirus, causing the president to ban public gatherings.
All public gatherings, including conferences, workshops, funerals, festivals, political rallies, sporting events, and religious events such as services in churches and mosques have been suspended for the next 4 weeks.
Political campaigns took a hit. This caused the flag bearer of the NDC, John Mahama, to suspend the Speak Out tour. Even though the partial lockdown has been lifted, the ban on public gatherings is still in force. So how has this impacted political activities in this election year? I caught up with political scientist and lecturer at the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana, Dr. Isaac Owusu-Mensah, who in 2016 correctly predicted victory for the NPP.
The season of the campaign will be shortened as compared to the previous times, because as we speak now, if it had not been the COVID-19, NPP will be seriously campaigning now for the 149 constituencies that we're going to have the primaries on. That will have been 25th of April, some few days from now. That's the coming Saturday or so, I guess. And then NDC probably will have also come out with their running mates by now. But now all this is suspended, and therefore the time of the campaigning will also reduce. The political parties, the time to campaign will be short, and for them, the shorter the campaign season, the better, because the amount of resources that they will have disbursed during the longer campaign season will be reduced, and therefore everybody will have to be on board.
For the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, apart from the NDC's inability to organize parliamentary primaries in some 20 constituencies, the party is falling.
Indeed, we're going to do the next batch of primaries the Saturday after the president's first directives. So we had prepared everything, but we immediately held a meeting and announced that health first. So we have suspended all our political activities.
However, for General Secretary of the NPP, John Boadu, the effect is enormous.
For us in politics, it's because we do mass mobilization, because we do mass gathering, mass meetings. Its impact is enormous. As you are aware, we're expected to have parliamentary primaries for where we have sitting members of parliament to the 5th of April. Because we still have in place social distance measures or restrictions with regards to mass gathering, public gathering, rallies and all that. We have to postpone it indefinitely. We're also expecting by May 2nd to have launched our campaign.
So how will the ban on public gatherings affect the political fortunes of the NPP and the NDC?
As for the elections and so on. We are not concerned about elections or discussing elections, discussing registration, discussing this, discussing that. Because the same people, if we are saying that the health crisis is an emergency, and if we are not careful, we don't act properly, it can consume us. We cannot be seen to be discussing what will happen after the health crisis, because if we don't act well now, we can be consumed such that there will not be any tomorrow for us to be talking about.
But John Boehly is very optimistic his party will win the 2020 elections.
For us in the Patriotic Party, we believe that if elections is held today, we will win, because we've done so much.
The economic conditions of electorates play a major role in the electoral choices, and how the governing party responds to these play an even bigger role. During the lockdown period, government rolled out various packages to support small businesses, the poor and the vulnerable. Dr. Usumensa believes the NPP has taken advantage of this reality. He explains further.
And I think so far, apart from the lifting of the ban that people have been against, that they are not very happy with, all kinds of misfeeling, all the steps the government have taken so far, people have appreciated it, except this one. But as the expert always keeps saying, we don't know and don't have all the information. So if the government also get the lifting right, that is really going to be their advantage. What was a bit surprised was that I think NDC should have also come on board, strongly on board, not necessarily doing their own thing, because all the resources that the government, the NPP or the government is putting on the ground, it's not from the NPP, it's from the government. So NDC should have joined them in the distribution of the food. We are also here to help the distribution of it, so that will reduce the strength that and the advantage that the incumbent government will have. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. So incumbent government really have a lot of advantage to its side in terms of distribution of their resources. And normally when it goes to elections, people reward political parties for what they have done and what they have not done.
Another factor that is central to the upcoming election is the voters' register. The Electoral Commission has been emphatic that there cannot be a credible election without a new voter register. Director of Electoral Service at the EC is Dr. Sribo Kwaku.
As far as the Commission is concerned, we are saying that we can only ensure credible register with a new register.
Okay, but that brings back my question, and this is relevant, if you may. In the midst of the uncertainties brought on by COVID-19, nobody knows when this is going to pass. Is the EC at least now reconsidering that and saying, in a push come to shove, we will have to shelve this and just do limited? Is that something you're considering?
Then can I also ask a question?
Please do.
In the phase of the COVID-19, are you also thinking of not having election 2020?
I don't know. I mean, it's something that the Electoral Commission has to...
Anybody in the Electoral Commission, knowing the resources that we have, knowing the situation of the register, will go for a new credible register.
I totally get that, but I don't know if you can answer me. Is there a thinking around what if? It's not possible.
And that would defeat our argument that if we are to have credible election 2020, we need a new register.
Okay.
There's been a ban on public gathering, and with the Electoral Commission postponing the compilation of a new voters register, there's still uncertainty about the way forward. But the NPP's John Boehly says the new register is a necessity.
There's no way we won't have a new register. You must understand this. Doing an additional or limited registration exercise clearly shows that you don't have an old register. There's no way we can have an election in December without a new register. If the Electoral Commission, per the condition that we find ourselves, decide to either maintain the old register or either validate the old register, they will necessarily have to do a registration exercise, be it a limited of some sort, in order to have a register that is credible, that contains almost every voter that has reached the age of voting. So there's no point. We can't use the old register without adding on, either validating it or adding on in terms of those who have turned the age of 18. So as for the old register, it's out entirely.
For Johnson Asiedu Nketia, the NDC's priority is the health of the people.
We've chosen to spend all our efforts to concentrate on, getting back the health of the nation first. Okay. Then after that, other things. In the Bible, they say, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all other things shall be given unto you. So let us focus on this. So those who think that they can be dealing with one hand on trying to take unfair advantage of the elections, and the other hand pretending to be putting the health first, in the end they will suffer the consequence. But we think that the health of the people first, and that is what we are. There are so many unknowns, so let us talk about how we can get out of the elections and not out of the pandemic, and not be talking about what will happen after that. You see, the people who are talking about what will happen, are we going to postpone the elections, are we going to do this, are we going to do this after the pandemic, after the pandemic, after the pandemic? Who is going to give you the situation you are talking about after the pandemic?
But as John Boydu knows something which is about to happen.
Executive Instrument 64 contains the restrictive measures with regards to public gatherings, with regards to funerals, with regards to conferences and all that. And that is ending by 26th of April. We don't know what the president will do, but if at that point, the effect of the virus has come down, then of course it's possible some lessening of the measures can happen. And we hope that by middle of May, end of May, if the burden has come down, then if the restriction is lifted, then the Electoral Commission can also devise ways of ensuring that they do what they are mandated to do in a manner that will not put the life of our people at risk. Because even in this same scenario, you have a country like South Korea having a successful election with a turnout that is highest as compared to even normal times. You have Mali just last 3-4 days having a successful election and all that. So I think that we are in a very difficult position. We are in a very difficult situation. These are not normal times, but because we must have the election on December 7th, we in the New Patriotic Party don't ever think and assume one day that there should be an extension on the mandate of our presidency or for our parliamentary candidate just for even an hour. So we believe that the efforts that the president has put in terms of devising measures to curb this disease that is afflicting everybody will be successful in order for us all to be able to go about our normal duties without hint or late.
The stakes are high, the controversies will continue, and sometimes the discussions will hit deadlocks. Ghana prepares for a crucial election in 8 months. But no matter how high the interest may be, the people, the citizenry, must be at the center of it all. Winston Amoah, Joy News.
And you would know that we launched not too long ago our election headquarters. Great package of some great information in programming for you as your most trusted source for all election content will always be right here, Joy News and the rest of the multimedia channels. But Winston Amoah will be joining us very soon. We'll talk about this, what may have inspired him to put together this great package, and well, as he went through the production process, putting together the scripting and all the personalities that he did speak to, what really struck him most.
Well, Winston is here to talk to us about, first of all, why he decided to go into the politics. These days, everybody's talking about the pandemic, but this politics is also around the corner. It's something that we all love, right? And people have been asking, when is this going to come back?
Exactly. I mean, talking about politics, all of us do love politics, but also because politics offers us choices of which we have to choose. And so it's always important, particularly in an election year. And you know that
At the beginning of the year, the NDC, for instance, launched their Speak Out tour, and the whole idea was to get their flag bearer, John Mahama, going around the country, interacting with people, and getting to know what their concerns are, and the party's manifesto committee taking advantage of it to compile the party's manifesto. Unfortunately for them, we're hit with coronavirus, and so the president banned in February 20. Because of that, many political activities, as we all do now, in fact, all political activities have come to a halt.
Yeah.
So what I just sought to do, I asked myself, so how is this impacting political parties, knowing very well that they normally would have expected to be on the road by now, campaigning vigorously. And
would have been talking about a vice presidential candidate for the NDC.
Exactly, exactly. And so with all of this, I decided to find out how it's impacted them. But of course, you're not going to do just the NDC. It's also affected the NPP, because then I knew that the NPP wasn't going to have its elections for the selection of parliamentary candidates in their constituencies with candidates, and so with members of parliament. And so I started to find out how this has impacted them, and it's been good. It's been good. We've gotten the sort of responses we really wanted to know, and that's it.
So they didn't sound too worried, but behind the scenes when you were interacting, did you get the sense that this is disrupting their calendar in ways that they couldn't imagine?
Well, certainly, if you listen to John Boydu carefully, he talks about how the impact has been enormous, because for the NPP, as we speak, they have 169 sitting members of parliament. Some of them will be going unopposed, but for those areas where they're supposed to be contests, they can't have those contests. And the other challenge is that there are people who have actually appealed to the National Appeals Committee because they've been disqualified. They think that they should be brought back into the race. And you can't sit on all these cases because of the challenges that we are faced with. So he's admitted that the challenges are enormous. The party actually planned to launch its campaign, that's the NPP, on the 2nd of May, and also launch its manifesto. Sadly, they're unable to do that. The NDC, you'd recognize, has conducted its parliamentary primaries in many of the constituencies, apart from about 20 of them in the Ashanti and Eastern regions. So for the NDC, Johnson Esiedin Ketia says, well, it's affected them in this way, but they haven't been so much hit like you would expect, as the NPP has. But the good thing for all of the political parties, as Dr. Isaac Owusu-Mensah says, is that it actually shortens the political campaigning period. One of the challenges we've had in this country is the fact that, in Britain, the last time there were talks about how the 2010 campaign was about 78 days, and that was one of the longest campaigns they had. But in Ghana, it's not 78 days. It's probably about 600 days, because, once you're done with elections, we start the campaigning. But in an election year, things change. And so the campaigning period might be very short, because... And
they might end up spending less as well, because we know it's a very expensive exercise.
Yes, so if it's short, like Dr. Owusu-Mensah said in it, you have all hands on deck, everybody joining to ensure that, you're able to wrestle power or retain power.
Yeah, there's also the issue about the Electoral Commission and whether or not they're compiling a new register.
Well, when it comes to the Electoral Commission, Dr. Sribo Kwaku has made it very clear that to have a credible election, you need a credible register. And, as Johnson Esiedin Ketia said, for them, their position is simple. You cannot think about what next, because you don't know how long the virus is going to last. But John Boydu makes the point that he thinks that you can never run an election without a form of a new voters register. So this is a form of a new voters register. What that means is that, during every limited registration exercise, we're told that about 1.2 million Ghanaians or more do register. And so in 2020, we're expecting some 1.2 million Ghanaians who might have turned 18 or who haven't registered to go out there and register. And he believes if they are not giving a chance to register, it could certainly affect or impact the election outcome. And so these persons should be given a chance to register. Not bearing in mind that in 1995, after we had done a major registration exercise when we introduced the colored voters register, in 1996 somebody went to court and said he had not registered, should be giving a chance to register. He thinks that people should be giving a chance to register. And he was very emphatic and categorical that there is no way that we would have the elections without some form of a new election. And that's how come the question came in, whether he knew something we didn't know.
Yeah.
And he says, EI 64, the ban on public gatherings, expires on Sunday. And he anticipates that based on how the government has managed everything, all things being equal, latest by May, the ban on public gatherings, if it's not lifted on Sunday, will be lifted by then, and then we could go into everything else that we want.
So that starts a whole new conversation, and I think because a lot of people were looking forward to lift the lockdown or not, we didn't realize that that second restriction of assault also ends this weekend. Yeah. So it's either the president would say, I am lifting that totally, you're free to go about and do whatever it is that you want to do, which would mean that all activities will come back in full, including the political activities.
Exactly, and once that happens, and you know, I was listening to Dr. Sribo Kwaku on Newsfile last Saturday, and he talked about the fact that, oh, if that is lifted and all of that, well, they find a way, there's a possibility that they could go ahead. Even if it's July, they wouldn't be behind schedule, you know, they'll still be able to, you know, compile a new voters register before the elections. And so with all the, you know, pressure on the president, if he lifts the ban on public gatherings over the weekend,
we will be back to NDC and PP.
We're back to normal. The challenge, however, is whether people would avail themselves for some of these exercises. The challenge, however, would be whether a lot of people would turn out in numbers, bearing in mind that public gatherings serve as, you know, avenues for the spread of the virus.
Yeah. Well, still a lot of uncertainties, but at least we're closer to Sunday. We're closer to seeing the decision of the president, whether there will be further in terms of an extension, or there will be total lifting of all the bans on gatherings and any other thing, so that we'll be asked to go around and be wearing the mask so you can have your political rallies and get everybody to wear masks. That's possible. Well,
I'm not sure you can actually, you can be able, I mean, I'm not sure you can actually determine what people do when it comes to political rallies.
That's also another thing.
And you can't control people when they come for political rallies.
So what if it's not an appeal, but it's also one that is law? You are required to wear the mask.
Yes, it's something that people have been advocating. That people, I mean, that becomes a mandatory thing that you know we should all wear masks. Germany has done it now. Their states have passed the laws to ensure that everybody gets to wear the mask. That's something you could do, but there's also a certain bit of fear. And look, let's say this: when the political season takes shape, when everything becomes NPP and NDC, the substance of the matter is always lost.
Sure.
When everything becomes NPP and NDC, the substance of what you're faced with is always lost. And that's the challenge we would face once we get into that particular season. And imagine if someone were to go to an NDC rally without a nose mask. It puts all of us at risk, but if you are wearing yours, you are not at risk. So, you know, all these things will come to play. But in the long term, I think that Sunday will determine.
Yeah, but it just occurred to me, you remember when the president said the schools, 2 more weeks for, you know, students, children not going to school. That was also extended for a further 2 weeks.
Yes.
It's interesting that the ban on gatherings, not more than 25 people for a funeral and so on, that wasn't affected.
It's still affected, you know, because
it looks like, okay, no.
So that's EI 64, Executive Instrument 64, ban on churches, funerals, schools. That was extended by 2 weeks, and 2 weeks will be on, the final 2 weeks will be on Sunday. So if the president...
This Sunday already?
This Sunday, yes. So if the president says, we are extending it, fine. If the president says, we are lifting it, it means that you can have your funerals now. And you can have them with all the people that want to be there.
We'll see how that goes. I mean, I just missed it. I missed it. Sunday already?
Yes, it's Sunday.
Okay. All right, Winston, you've begun the political conversation for us, which is good. People are getting a bit tired of everyday coronavirus, COVID-19, the number of people who have died, and the cases that we're recording, that is still very much with us. But it's good that you've changed the game a bit with the Ghanaian politics. Thanks for bringing it back. Stay with us. We've got show business coming your way right here on the AM Show.